Good morning, it's Thursday, the 16th of April. I'm Maret Gwyn and you're watching Europe Today, your daily dose of European news and analysis live here on Euronews. Coming up today, after his stunning electoral win on Sunday, Hungarian Prime Minister-elect Péter Magyar is making waves before he's entered office, vowing to undo Viktor Orbán's influence on public institutions and the media. We'll bring you the latest. And Russian bombardments hit the Ukrainian cities of Kyiv, Dnipro and Odessa overnight. It comes as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky continues his European tour in the Netherlands after a visit to Rome yesterday. He's been drumming up fresh defence deals with allies. And Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni was once considered Europe's Trump whisperer. But tensions have flared up publicly this week. We'll be asking whether the sudden breakdown in the once sweet relationship is creating a rare moment of national unity in Italy. But first, on our top story today, Péter Magyar is pushing for a rapid transfer of power in Hungary after that landslide win in the elections last Sunday. For more, I'm joined in the studio this morning by our Hungarian correspondent, Sándor Csiros. Good morning, Sándor.
Good morning.
Listen, Péter Magyar has been keeping you busy this week. He's really making waves just 4 days after that stunning win on Sunday. Tell us what he's been up to.
Well, I think Péter Magyar brought a political tornado to Hungary. He's willing to change the system of Viktor Orbán very rapidly, and he launched an attack against the key holders of power and the key institutions. So, for example, yesterday in the morning he went to the public broadcaster. He gave an interview. Actually, this was the first interview of him in the last 18 months, and he completely considers this institution as an Orbánist propaganda tool, and he simply said that, okay, I'm going to shut it down, we will do a new television for Hungary. And then he went to visit the president of the country, Tamás Súlyog. He gave him a straightaway ultimatum, whether you leave or we will get rid of you. And suddenly the president understood the message and he said that maybe I'm considering to leave by myself and put the mandate to you as soon as possible. Let's listen to what Péter Magyar said after this meeting.
I told the president that if he does not leave willingly, we will use the mandate we received from our voters, and with some amendments to the constitution, we will remove him and all the other puppets who were appointed in his place by the Orbán regime.
So a very dramatic few days, Sándor. And Viktor Orbán, how is he dealing with this defeat?
Well, there are indicators that, it's not a simple defeat for Orbán, but a complete humiliation. He hasn't shown up publicly ever since the vote on Sunday. He posted only once on Facebook, and many government officials and many people around the government are blaming actually him for the bad campaign and for the bad results. Now there is one very interesting thing that yesterday it turned out that Orbán is missing his last EU summit, which will take place next week in Cyprus. He's not going there. He's not going to face other leaders after his non-stop veto policies. This is just to avoid public humiliation at the summit. But remember that during his 16 years in power, Orbán never missed a single European summit. This is going to be the last one that he's missing. And it's also, in my view, it puts a shade on his legacy of 16 years.
Indeed, Sándor, Viktor Orbán missing that summit next week. Thank you so much for bringing us up to speed there. Now, Péter Magyar's electoral win has a potentially huge impact on one country, Ukraine. Magyar has already laid out his position on Russia's full-scale invasion, saying Ukraine is the victim in this war and calling on Orbán to lift his controversial veto on that €90 billion loan for Ukraine before he leaves office, expected in May. Joining me now in the studio for more is our Ukraine correspondent, Sasha Bakulina. Good morning. Thank you for being here. So tell us first, how important is this shift in the Hungarian position for Ukraine?
It's crucially important for Kyiv because there are, of course, a couple of vetoes, Viktor Orbán's vetoes, that are still there in place. This is the €90 billion loan. This is also the the new package of sanctions against Russia, and of course anything regarding Ukraine's EU accession. But first and foremost, the most urgent thing nowadays for Ukraine and for the EU is unblocking this loan, which has already been agreed upon at the summit in December. And this is the money out of the 90 billion. 60 billion is something that Ukraine desperately needs for the defense industry and to make sure that Ukraine does have enough weapons.
And Zelensky has been touring European capitals. He's been in Norway, Germany, Italy, and expected in the Netherlands today. What is he trying to achieve?
Volodymyr Zelensky is on the tour of securing defense cooperation agreements. Now it is with the EU states. And that's very interesting. Every time he goes to the capital, we could see that there are a couple of agreements at least coming out of them, specifically with attention to drone production, because Ukraine is having this strong expertise in making drones and the expertise and experience in air defense when it comes to drone attacks. Now let's take a listen to what Giorgia Meloni had to say about it in Rome.
We believe that supporting Ukraine is not only a moral duty, but also a strategic need, because it is not just about dignity, freedom and independence of Kyiv, but also the security of Europe in the broadest sense of the term is at stake. We are working to increase the interaction between our defense sectors and between our defense companies. This will definitely add strength, technology and jobs to both countries. Of course, we discuss diplomacy and communication with the American side. But this is not easy for anyone right now.
With the US-led talks now being stalled for a couple of weeks, Zelensky is indeed trying to secure the cooperation and help with the European states. But also this European tour really resembles the recent Gulf tour, when Zelensky also toured the Gulf countries, securing the defense cooperation agreements with all of them.
Sasha, thank you so much for that update. And speaking of the Gulf, we can now cross over to our correspondent, Adel Halim, who is standing by us for us this morning in Doha, in Qatar. Adel, good morning. We know that the president of the European Council, Antonio Costa, was there in Qatar yesterday as part of his tour of the Gulf. Bring us up to speed on what President Costa had to say.
Good morning. That's right. European Council President Antonio Costa wrapped up his two-day tour of the Gulf, ending here in Doha with a very clear message. Europe wants to play a larger role in a region facing a fragile moment. Costa met with leaders from the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar. And while he mostly wanted to listen, he also wanted to push two key priorities. One is enabling a lasting ceasefire, and the reopening of free navigation in the Strait of Hormuz, which is a vital global and energy trade route. Now, he also stressed Europe's solidarity with Gulf states facing recent Iranian attacks and made it clear the European Union sees itself as a reliable partner on security, diplomacy, and economic cooperation. And he warned the stakes are high, saying that the world is entering a dangerous phase, and unless countries defend the international rules-based order, the alternative is chaos that we're seeing from the Ukraine to the Gulf. The Council President only took a handful of questions, including one from Euronews. I asked him what he heard from leaders across the region and what concrete steps are next in EU-GCC ties. Let's hear what he had to say.
It's important that the European Union and the Gulf cooperation countries could work together between the EU and the GCC, but also bilaterally with each Gulf state. And we are keen to do this. We are negotiating free trade agreements with some of them, strategic partnership with the others, and we are talking with all of them. I think more than ever, it's very important that we achieve this.
Now, Costa also said the second EU-GCC summit will be held later this year. The first was in Brussels in 2024. The next will be held in this region. Marit?
Adel, thank you so much for that update. And yesterday, in fact, I sat down with the Secretary General of the Gulf Cooperation Council, Jassim Al-Budaywi, and I started by asking him whether he believed the war on Iran had brought the Gulf and the European Union closer together.
I think the EU is one of the most important strategic partner to the GCC. It is a very historic relationship. It covers almost every aspect of our lives, from political to economical to educational to cultural to investment, all aspects are included in this partnership. We have achieved so many goals and so many achievements that we feel in our life on a daily basis. Definitely the escalation in our region and the Iranian continuous attack on the GCC country brought the GCC-EU into even closer relationship. I felt it, and this was reflected in my discussion and dialogues here in Brussels with different leaders in the European Parliament and in the European Commission. So this is bringing us together. We are looking at the stability and the security of the region, because it is obvious to everybody that the stability in the Gulf is an important element for the international stability and security.
I'd like to ask you how this experience, these 7 weeks of conflict we've seen, have maybe changed the way that the members of the GCC think about security. Do you think there's been an inflection point here, and do you think there'll be more work on, for example, partnerships with countries like Ukraine to bolster the region's defense?
There are many lessons learned from this conflict. And I can categorize them into two parts. The first lesson learned is how do we achieve our GCC integration that we've been working on since 1981 when the GCC was started. What do we need to do more economically, security, military? The second lesson learned that we have learned and we need to even work more on is to upgrade our partnerships with many of our true and good friends, such as, for example, the EU. How do we need to strengthen our partnerships? What aspects should we concentrate on? How do we look at our partnerships, the one we have? Do we need new partnerships? These are the lessons learned that we, are trying to work on. But as I told you before, we are very happy about the fact that our integration and communication and cooperation is even beyond anybody's expectation.
Moving on now, US President Donald Trump has lashed out publicly at the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, a leader he once called a fantastic lady. To explain why, I'm joined by our correspondent Vincenzo Genovese. Good morning. Thank you for being here in the studio with us. Listen, what is at the root of this breakdown in the relationship between these leaders?
Yes, Mard, indeed, we have always seen Meloni as a sort of bridge between Trump and Europe for her right-wing, hard-right policy, for her position on migration, also for her proximity to the MAGA world. But a few days ago, Trump attacked Pope Leo, saying he is very weak on crime. And there are few things in Italy that you can't touch, and the Pope is among them. Let's listen to Meloni.
Penso che quello che ho detto è quello che penso.
What I said is what I think, and that is that the statement, especially with regards to the pontiff, are unacceptable. I expressed my solidarity with Pope Leo, and I will tell you more. I would not feel comfortable in a society where religious leaders do as they are told by politicians, not in this part of the world. So I disagreed, and I said so.
Ecco, per cui non sono stata d'accordo e ve l'ho detto.
I've never heard anything similar, Mared. Coming from Meloni, she had never used the word unacceptable before speaking of Trump, and Trump didn't take it well. Of course, he said, and I'm quoting, in an interview with the Italian newspaper Corriere della Sera, "I'm shocked at her. I thought she had the courage, but I was wrong. Very sad. She's much different than I thought. She's not the same person. Italy is not the same country." So also here, then, Trump said in another interview that Meloni was very negative. These are kind of unprecedented attacks from Trump to Meloni. I would say that this bridge has collapsed now, but which is this is not necessarily bad for Meloni, because, Trump is very unpopular in Italy, is becoming more and more unpopular also in Europe, and is becoming an issue for the right wing, for the conservative, and also for the far-right parties across Europe, as we are reporting on Euronews.
Yes, Vincenzo, we'll keep an eye on that reporting and how Trump is perhaps disturbing a little bit the mega or MAGA movement in Europe as well. Now, moving on, tomorrow, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez will host 15 world leaders in Barcelona as part of a mobilization of the global progressive left. Joining us now live to explain more is MEP Hanna Yalul, a Spanish MEP who was previously Migration Secretary in the government of Sánchez and who will join the mobilization. MEP Yalul, welcome. Is it fair to say first that this gathering in Barcelona is also a united front or a reaction against Trump and Trump's ideological allies across the world? Is this essentially an anti-Trump coalition?
Good morning. Thank you for having me here today. No, I wouldn't say so. This is not an anti-Trump rally. This is not an anti-Trump conference at all. And it's very important to make this clear. The global progressive mobilization is a work, a joint effort from all progressive forces, from different political organizations and different intellectual foundations and trade unions. It's a wide range of progressive organizations and leaders, which is very important, that we are gathering in Barcelona, led by Pedro Sánchez, and that begins with him as president of the Socialist International, as Stefan Löfven as president of European Socialists, that got this initiative and that we have been working on for the last year. And now we're here in Barcelona finally with many leaders all around the world and to fight for democracy, climate change, international law, but this is not an anti-Trump reaction to anything or any sort of it.
And the European left, I think it's fair to say, has been through quite a difficult period of time. If we look at the European Council, that's obvious. It's dominated by right-wing leaders. How are you hoping to kind of reclaim that narrative and reclaim your voter base across the continent?
Well, I think the image of Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez by itself talks a lot of what people are expecting, for the future. I mean, his global image, the support he's taken with his stance, his coherence in political coherence, let's say, against double standards. When we talk about Gaza or when we talk about Ukraine, when he said no to war, he's having a huge, massive support in his positions. And I think that shows how he's being very widely supported by civil society all around the world. I think that this not to war shows how people think that peace, and we are at an important moment for peace. He talks about climate change also, or when he talks about, techno-oligarchs, how to take care of our children with social media. I think he's always making a very important stand that are very widely supported. And I think this gathering in Barcelona is massive, So that shows how much support he has and how much, social democratic and left forces wants to unite with these main principles that he represents.
Indeed, Sánchez has obviously been a bit of a figurehead on the global stage recently, but he has faced criticism from some certain political parties in Europe on his recent decision to regularize 500,000 migrants. Some saying it undermines even European security. How do you respond to that criticism?
Well, I think that let's go to talk about data, okay? So for the last year, we have had a very, let's say, a policy with migrants that talks about always security, of course, and legality within the framework of legality, which I think it is very important for everybody to understand. All these migrants are very well regulated in our country in the sense that they all have permission to work. And last year, only 700,000 migrants collaborated and helped to the stability of in the labor market.
Yes.
So I think it is important to understand that these migrants do not steal the job of anybody. At the contrary, we are the fastest growing economy in the world right now.
Okay.
Because of our policies also with migrants.
Thank you so much. I'm afraid that's all we have time for, but we will be following, of course, that global progressive conference this weekend in Barcelona. That's all we have time time for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back again at the same time tomorrow. In the meantime, do get in touch with your tips and suggestions at europetoday@euronews.com. We do love hearing from you. We'll be back the same time, same place tomorrow. See you then.